Wetshaving. What do you think? 2024, looking ahead. Any predictions?
Oh yeah, lots of collabs. I think this will
More
be.
collabs.
If last year wasn't the year of the collabs, I think this year would be the year of the collabs, and that just goes to like how people buy nowadays. I think people are just a lot more selective with what they buy. It's almost like, okay, if you know something's coming out from a certain person, you kind of know, if you know the person, what their wheelhouse is, and so they're not going to release something that they don't like. So you kind of have an idea about where that scent is going to lie. So in that sense, it's almost like you kind of buy with a little less pressure in terms of, I'm not going to like this release if you know the guys that are releasing it, versus if it's just the artisan releasing something random.
Yeah.
Because that could be anywhere, really. Like with the Mafia, it's going to be a very, very nice cologne dupe. That's kind of where, and most likely from Jean-Paul Gaultier. So it's like
that's where you guys, that's where you like to live, in that area.
Yeah,
and I think I just saw, like, in my YouTube feed, there's another flanker that came out from Jean-Paul Gaultier.
The green one.
Oh gosh, what is it called?
I have no idea, but I'll go smell it. Like I've bought a bunch of fragrances lately, and nothing really has jumped out to the point where I'd be confident in releasing another Mafia soap, and we're not gonna until we have one that absolutely like blows our socks off, right? So at least with us, it's gonna be something that's been vetted, and that's quite unique. So yeah, like that's what I mean. If you, and like BBS Live, like those guys all have great noses, and it'll be a pretty safe buy. Whereas if you go with something completely random, it's kind of taking a risk. So yeah. Anyways, I think
no, totally, I agree.
Collabs,
more collabs. Okay. And then as far as, like, we have discussed prior, artisans closing up shop, moving on, etc. If you had to venture a guess, compared, I don't have a hard number, but just the kind of, if we dug down, we could get the numbers. But for 2024, do you think there's going to be less, about the same, or more artisans closing up compared to the previous year?
I hope there's less.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yep. I'm not wishing any doom on anyone. No.
I think there's going to be less. I think.
Okay.
We're kind of emerging out of the pandemic. I mean, things are getting more expensive with inflation, but at least people can get stuff. Whereas, last few years it's been just a supply issue. So whether they decide to close up shop or they decide to increase prices, we'll see, right? I think deep down in my heart there will be less, because I feel like there was a lot last year that went out of business. So, fingers crossed.
Yeah. My guess, just to go a different way, I think it will probably look about the same. I don't think more, because there would have to be other factors that I have some sort of like insight on, where like it would force more people out. But I think we can expect to see around the same number of closings, and that's just based on closing up shop because it's not doing well, versus someone that's been in the game for a while. It was a hobby project, and it's kind of like they don't have time to devote to the hobby. I want to say that's how a lot of the closings were characterized as. But I do think there's some really real, like, financials where people have been kind of, like just kind of just holding on. I think this year might be where it kind of drops off. So for that reason, I'd say I think we'll get around the same, which is probably like a dozen, maybe like a little under a dozen. Artisans. That's a prediction. Again, I hope not. I hope not.
Here's a follow-up question to that question.
Yeah, sure.
If we're gonna say, people are going to close up shop, is it going to be majority software? Is it going to be majority brush makers, or is it going to be majority razor makers? For like, where do you think most of the shop closes will happen in those 3 categories.
As far as like which area of Wetshaving, I would say soap maker. I think soap makers, because there's I'm of the perception. I'm of the perception that
hold on.
Yeah, just reorient yourself and run from the sun. But
blasted by the sun.
Just by pure numbers, I'm playing. If I play the numbers games, there's far fewer razor makers to close up shop than there are like soap makers, and you can. I think secondary, like you could guess brush makers, because same thing. There's always new people. It's something you could do on the side. So like as someone steps down, 3 or 4, like it's like Hydra. Cut one head off and 2 replace it. It's kind of that way for, I guess, both soap making and brush making. But if I had to guess, I think on the software side, it's where people dabble, and might just be like they can't sustain it. So it's also just more competition, honestly, Bilu. Like there's the bar is higher than it's ever been. And so if you had entered the market, and this dives into another territory that we have discussed, I think probably more offline than online, but where it's like, if you don't hustle, if you don't use the tools that are out there for like a small business or hobbyist, whatever you want to call it, if you're not plugging yourself at the very least on social media channels, which like pick one, like right, I think we've discussed this. There are people who they're keeping updated. They might do an occasional live, or just at least have regular interaction with the hobby. Not the hobby, with customers / hobbyists. But there also are plenty of them just like, I'm not sure what they're doing. It's like whether you're hoping and praying that someone will plug your product for you. And I understand if it's a side hustle, it's hard to find time. But what's the point of doing it if you can't dedicate a post a week just to say, it doesn't even have to be like new product. It can be a slice of life thing, because people, if you're in this, we're like one degree of separation from any artisan, any soap maker, any brush maker, really, like 2 degrees, maybe at most. And if you can't cultivate that, that kind of basic relationship, I don't think you can really stay afloat in this current market.
And I agree with you. I think, well, it's either soap or razors, in my opinion, because so for the soap maker specifically, there's a lot that have like really basic soap formulation, which really doesn't cut it nowadays.
Sure.
So 4 years ago, there's what I like to call like the default base that a lot of artisans were using, and I think that was just like, if you Googled how to make a shave soap, that was the formula that was readily available for free for you to start with. But of course, the last 2 years, there's been a lot of tinkering with soap bases, and they've gotten a lot better. So like if you want to enter this game as a soap maker, like you can't have that free on Google recipe. Like you have to have something better than that, which is a decently high barrier to entry. And then the other side of the coin is razors, which is a super high barrier to entry. You either have to have your own machine shop, which not a lot of people do, or you have to be really good at designing and understanding geometry. So in that sense, and I think the Canadian razor makers have really upped their game, because there are a lot of razor makers in the US, but I don't feel like I heard all that much from them last year in terms of like innovation or coming up with new razors. Other than Blackland, I think that was the only one that like did a decent amount.
That's the main one I think of too. As you mentioned that, like really, it's like, all the razor makers, manufacturers, Canada. It's so much Canada.
So I think those are the guys that are kind of pushing for innovation. And as razor makers, I think you kind of have to you either come up with new razors, or you come up with new aesthetics, right?
Like handles,
Chris, from Carve. I'm like, eventually you're going to be like a razor designer instead of like a razor manufacturer. And he's like, yeah, maybe, like, what happens when you innovate to the point where it's near perfection? You can't really come up with anything new that pushes the needle or like is different enough than your current offerings that it's worth selling. So it's like, do you just make them prettier? Do you just make them the designs more intricate? Like, what do you do, right? So it'll be interesting to see this next year.
Well, it's funny. I feel like just kind of continuing on this track with the razor makers. A lot of times, it's to just turn your storefront into a one-stop shop. I think that's kind of like one way that, and even like Carve, for example, it does offer other things. Like, oh, while you're here, you could pick up a brush, you could pick up a soap. Whether it's like you have someone else, you team up with someone else to make it, or make it in-house, whatever the case might be. I think Aylesworth has a brush as well, right? So you can kind of see it already. But I also think there's ways where, for those who might not know, we're always hounding Chris from Carve to make a titanium overlander or Christopher Bradley, knowing that that's another set of like with tools and other stuff, like other considerations to work with titanium. But I don't think we could not request it while we're live together. So Chris, get some titanium on there, add that, get, reel in those big spenders, and then you'll be good for the year. And because you got the brass covered and stainless steel, I think those two, I think, amongst those razors are regularly available, or at least within weeks, right, of ordering it. Yeah. So titanium, maybe.
And the reason why I say razor makers is like, so you have, let's say, 3 big razor makers, and they make really good razors. It's not like soap where you could release 10 different scents in a year. Like, these are like just the razor, right? So with less, with more consolidation into like the top 3 brands, let's say, I don't know if it really leaves much space for anyone who's not competing at that level, and anyone new, right? So that's why I included the razor makers into the. I think everyone pretty much said soap for like companies going out of business, but like, what do you do when you're competing with these Canadian razor makers that are putting out incredibly high quality stuff? When you're not, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I guess the other way, because we mentioned Blackland as well, is if you have a double edge, is to venture out in other razor types, whether that be single edge. And I know that's somewhere that both, if Carve and Aylesworth are the other names we're mentioning here, if they want to go into that direction, because like to innovate it's pretty hard, especially we're talking about kind of a vintage based, like practice / hobby, but you kind of just want to cover your grounds as far as like popular. It's like, oh, do you want whatever single edge you want to go Jam or Artist Club or whatever, like that is one possible direction to go. I don't know what goes into the design and like in the actual manufacturing of it. This one could be harder. I'm guessing double edge, given that it's like especially a 3-piece, is like the most simple of the ones to create. Like, you don't have people going out like, oh, I just designed my own twist to open,
right?
And there are like twist to open adjustables and all that. That's like the tougher stuff to do, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not necessarily innovation. I think, and sorry, I know the audience is mentioning stuff too, but like, yeah, working with different materials is a big one. That's what Nate mentioned. He also wanted to say that carbon has been working with a lot of kind of high end materials, which that's absolutely true. We're talking about, I think easily over the $500 mark for a razor, and that's another thing where we're like into luxury goods areas.
Yeah.
You could go, you could. I mean, I think the margins on that are much better. I would assume. I'd assume.
But more risk too, right? Like.
Yes.
Who made that $1,000 razor?
Tedalus.
And what, they made like 30 or something like that.
Something like
right?
that.
Like I wonder how long that's going to take to sell out. But yeah, I don't know, man. I know that like that's them like throwing their hat in the game for razors, but that is an elite group that's going to buy that razor. Whereas I think the Canadian razor makers. Does Blackland have like a $100 razor around that mark?
Yeah, I do think they offer.
Is it Dart? Was it the Dart?
The Dart, I think, is more affordable. And I thought the Blackbird comes in brass, or it used to at least. Okay. That would also bring the price down for I think their flagship razor there. Yeah. But yeah, I think having kind of like what you're getting at though is having razors to hit all the markets. So you have your sub one, maybe your $50 to $100 razor. If you can go cheaper, sure, but that's kind of hard. That's kind of hard to do and make a profit. Yeah. So you got your sub 100, you got your mid range with maybe let's say 100 to like 199. I don't know what you would call the 200 to 500 range. I feel like so maybe upper mid. Yeah. Upper mid, and then
that's upper tier, and then there's just insane tier, which is
there's like 1%. The top 1% can afford this, and even they're like, new car or razor.
Yeah, cars is an expensive hobby, man. Holy.
Oh god, no, yeah. Plenty of other more expensive hobbies, but
we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a different year for me. Just personally, diving into the unscented stuff, man. Like that's been what I've been doing lately.
Do you want to expand on that a little bit for those who might not know why unscented?
Sure. Yeah. So last year or the year before, I developed rosacea, which is a skin condition that basically you have redness of the skin, and I've been on this journey of finding out why. So I've changed my diet. I cut out alcohol. Cut out caffeine. So I don't drink coffee anymore.
Crazy.
Certain slight right?
Yeah. Good on you though. Good on you. I didn't know that.
I mean, I'll have it and then just not go out for 2 days because my face will just go red. And then that also includes fragrance on the face. So shaving soap, splash, balm, any of that stuff can't use anymore, which kind of sucks. So that's why I've been shifting over to the unscented stuff, which has been a pretty fun journey, actually, like more fun than I thought it was going to be. Just trying out all the unscented gear and then just wearing fragrance after I'm done. So personally, I'm dipping a little out of the soap and splash game, more into the fragrance game. So that's why I was mentioning like Zingari's solid extracts and then her perfumes and Gentleman's Nod, and like that's where I'll be spending my money this year. Given they are more expensive, so that's why like actually smelling stuff is going to be even more monumental because I can't be dropping like $150 on blind buys. So that's kind of where my future holds for wet shaving. But it is a bummer, but I think like you've said before, the main benefit is the people in this hobby. So like doing stuff with you, doing stuff with the Mafia, just on Discord chats, chatting with the audience, like that is so much fun, man. And I'm so happy I'm a part of this. And that journey was all the way from Parasso to unscented and everything in between, which led me here. So it sucks, but I'm still extremely grateful that I'm part of this hobby.
If you enjoyed it in any way, shape, or form, hit that like button. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Don't miss out on any new videos. And of course, leave a real comment if you want to see more of these. If you have suggestions in the future, we'd love to hear them. But Blou, thank you so much. Audience, thank you so much. We love you and hope you guys have a great weekend.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thanks, John.
Catch you in the next one. Take care, guys.